If you're interested in harnessing your child's unique gifts and helping nurture the divine gifts that they were gifted, then this episode is for you. We're going to be diving into really nurturing your child's unique abilities and what they were gifted here to create on this earth, and how to really help nurture that and guide them in that. Thank you for tuning into the Embodied Mother podcast. I am your host, Jacqueline Page. Join me as I share my stories of my own experiences of moving through the threshold of motherhood and the wisdom that I have developed along the way. It is my hope that this is a space where mothers will walk away feeling empowered to embrace and nurture themselves and to feel grounded in their role as mother. Together, let's build the skills that will help you step into your sovereignty as mother and be the light and the pillar for your family. I can't wait to journey together. Before we get started in talking about your children's gifts and what they were uniquely and divinely gifted, that really starts with knowing ourselves and coming back home to ourselves. I know that I may sound like a broken record in many of the concepts and themes that I've talked about, but I really truly believe that some of these things need to be said over and over again to really anchor into our hearts the things that need to be shared about how we show up as mother, how we show up as a wife, how we guide and lead our family. And in order to really dive into leading our family, I know and I have witnessed that comes back to knowing myself. This goes back to knowing my unique gifts, to truly see my child for their unique divine creation that God created them in and the gifts that they were gifted with. That really gets back to being able to know myself. If I want to help develop and nurture their abilities, have I given myself that opportunity to do that? Have I reflected on what I have been gifted? Am I harnessing and nurturing that within myself? And so really this episode starts with getting to know our own self, getting to know our unique gifts. We're all these golden threads that are weaving together this tapestry of life. And as we get to come back home to ourselves, our authentic, divine, created selves, we begin to heal humanity. We begin to weave a blanket of love, of protection, of joy that is washed over this world. And so it is our duty, it is in service of this world for us to make sure that we are tapping into our own unique selves, into our divine gifts. I know that I have created a whole podcast episode on this, but I'm going to say it again, is creativity is a basic need. I have witnessed that just like food and sunlight and water and movement, that we need to thrive as a human being here, I believe that creativity is one of those, because as I've cultivated a rhythm, a daily rhythm, a lifestyle that harnesses the ability and the time and space for me to tune into my creative gifts, I thrive. I hold vitality. I have more energy. As I begin to take action on the things that are placed in my heart, the little messages for myself that I am needing to continue to take action on to stay in alignment with God and the sovereign path that I am meant to live. And when I began to look at my creative gifts and really let go of the belief systems and the judgments and the shame and the limiting beliefs that I carried around myself on the creativity that I have. I used to be very rigid, and I know I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, Living on Purpose with Dodge Feeler, on my journey of really letting go of the belief systems, letting go of my own constraints that I have placed on myself, on my inabilities to tap into my creativity. Because it doesn't matter if you're man, woman, we hold creativity within ourselves. We each have these unique gifts, and they show up in different ways. And really, as I've allowed mine to unfold, I have seen that I am the artist. I am the artist of my life. And when I use this life as my canvas, it is so much more poetic to live as I watch the sunrises each day, as I live and I'm home with my children, it's finding the art of cultivating my life. And I can tell you right now that 5 years ago, if you would have told me that you're so creative, I would have been like, I don't know who you're talking to. I do not own markers and pencils and watercolor or paint, and the only pencils and markers that I did have was because my children were having them. And really, I am so honored to be a mother, because it has been the most humbling journey of allowing those gifts within myself to unfold and come alive and to really reawaken within me. That's what it is. It's getting back to that playfulness. It's getting back to the creating without judgment, creating without expectation. That was a lot of letting go for me. I had created a lot of stories from outside people telling me that I wasn't creative, from my own experiences of the limiting beliefs that I placed on myself, that I talked a lot about in the motherhood episode, that I just had this lack of confidence holding my belief systems around my creativity, around who I am as a human, around who I am as a mother and as a wife. And so this journey of getting to know our children and to truly see them for who they uniquely are, it took an unfolding to truly see who I am. And it's been a journey. And one of my prayers every day, or maybe not every day, but more often, I have been praying to see myself through God's eyes, to see my beauty through God's eyes, to see my creativity through God's eyes, to even just see who I am through God's heart, through His love for me. And that has been able to help me soften in the lens that I look at myself and in the lens that I carry with myself. Because when I can hold tenderness for my unique self, when I can have love and compassion for myself, to see my own inner child wanting to come out and play and to create and to weave into my life again, I am able to connect to my children on a deeper level. I'm able to see their authentic self. I'm able to see them through an eyes of tenderness and through a lens of compassion. Because motherhood and parenting is one of the most dualistic journeys that you will feel. You have such highs and such lows. And I really believe that's because children are mirroring within us what needs to be healed, the things within us that are asking for our attention that we may not have taken the time to see through self-reflection, through prayer, through meditation or journaling, or just quietness within ourselves. That's going to be mirrored back from our children. And I say this with a lot of compassion for myself, and I know I won't be alone when I say this, is that sometimes through motherhood, when I have not taken the time to be very full of vitality and making sure I'm getting enough sunlight and putting my feet in the ground and nurturing my interest and my creativity, sometimes motherhood can feel harder. It can feel harder to love my child wholly in the way that they need me to. And I know that motherhood is that unfolding to healing ourselves, to healing our own inner child. And this is all to say that it is important that we take care of ourselves as mother. And so, yes, this episode is about nurturing your child and their interests, but that doesn't negate our interests, our self, our abilities and capabilities. And so it really starts with ourselves. I encourage you that if you're listening to this, before I even dive into guiding you to nurture your own child's gifts, I encourage you to take time to sit with what that is for you. I would like you to maybe journal or even sit in quiet and think about how you played as a child. What were the games that interested you? What were the hobbies that you had? What did you like to do in your free time? What are the kinds of games you played with your friends, with yourself? What interested you? And allow that be the starting point of your journey of what that creativity might need to come back alive for you, or the playfulness. Remember, creativity is not just a paint palette and paper. Creativity is how we live our life, how we show up, how we interact with one another, how we cook, how we clean. how we orient our lives, all of that is creativity. And so I would like you to let go of the boxes that we can create around ourselves that put parameters on what that can look like for us. Maybe that is horseback riding. Maybe that's fishing. Maybe that's going to the beach and just letting the waves take you and wash you. I don't know what that is for you, but whatever it is, I encourage you to start taking baby steps each day to bring a little bit of that into your life and see how that unfolds for you. And so now that we've gotten that part out of the way, I would also like to cover creating a family foundation for ourselves. We talked a little bit about this in the episode with Daniel Gross, in the episode of Raising Sons and Family Foundations. And the reason why I think it's important to reiterate this is really because I believe we have to get clear on what our foundation is as a family so that we can build upon that base. We can come back to those values that we have set aside for our families to know that if my child is asking about this as an interest, is that in alignment with our family values? Are we going to orient our whole life around one member of our family? And I think that's really important to evaluate because as a family, if you think about a business and a system, if you were to only pour energy into one sector or one section of a business and neglect all of the others, you wouldn't have a thriving business. And so part of getting clear on helping your child harness their gifts in a way that stays in alignment with your family values is to get clear on your family values. What are the things that feel important to you for you to orient your life around, not just for your marriage, not just for one member of the family, but for the whole family? And I think in an age or a time and culture where we are very connected through social media, through technology, it is very important that we do not allow a 30-second reel on Instagram or on TikTok to alter our belief systems about the way we parent. And I say that with tenderness because that was me at one point. When I wasn't eating in a way, orienting my life in a way where I felt very vital and very strong in my mind, or even clear on our family values, I saw how malleable my belief systems were based on other people's experiences or their opinions or their belief systems. And it gave way for a very rocky foundation. There wasn't this safety feeling, really, when I wasn't clear on that for myself, and my husband and I weren't clear on that as a unit in a marriage, as the mother and the father and the leaders and the anchors of the home. And so before you even dive into really orienting how to harness your children's gifts, I think that it is important to sit down with you and your partner first and discuss, what does that look like for us? What is important for us? What is the foundation that we're wanting to cultivate our family on, and really get rooted in that? Because it's easy to allow something to come into, an experience or an opportunity that you might get romanced by in the moment. And that can be very easy, but then you realize, wait, that isn't aligned with our family values. I'm not going to give my time and energy to this because that is not where we're wanting to go as a family, or how we're wanting to operate as a family. So now we're in the part where we can talk about helping our children interests lead the way. And this really has been a beautiful journey that has unfolded during our homeschool rhythms. And I am not at all saying allowing your child's interest to overtake your family, allowing your child's interest to be put on the forefront of everyone else's needs, interests, and desires. That is not what I'm saying at all, which is why I suggested to get clear on your family values before diving into the interest. And really, it is interesting because my son's interests have sparked desires that I was having or wanting to get to know more about. And it was like his interests have led the way in that. And for example, I know I mentioned this in the last episode, but I wanted to really get to know the plants in our area. I wanted to know and to be able to identify the plants the ones that that are edible or medicinal or useful for our everyday lives. And we would be with friends and they would be able to identify it. And I'm like, I'm envious of that. And yet, I never took action on that. I never took time to cultivate that knowledge for myself. And so it was through playing survival games that my son loved to go to the woods behind our house and pretend to survive off the land. And it was in this playing this game that we really actually began to learn about the plants around us. And we even invested in a foraging walk with paleo foraging to get to know the area around us even deeper. And so that's why I encourage you to think about what you liked to do when you were a child, because here my son's play is actually inspiring us in the way we're learning right now in homeschool, that we're diving more into a plant study. And so it's really beautiful actually to allow his interest to lead his education. And another example of this is I've been wanting to learn how to use the sewing machine again. I knew how when I was younger. I took home ec in high school and harnessed a little bit more of my skills. And then I didn't touch a sewing machine since probably high school or maybe early college. And my aunt gifted me her old sewing machine. And it has been sitting in my closet for about a year. And I kept saying, I'm going to learn. Which really, there's not that much learning. The only resistance was I didn't know how to thread the bobbin on this sewing machine and how to thread the sewing machine. That was literally the two things that I needed to learn. Yet I had created these big barriers in not doing it. And my son was like, when can we learn how to use a sewing machine? I've been asking you. I want to learn how to sew. I want to make these camo pants. And so one day we put it on the schedule for our homeschool rhythm of watching a YouTube video on how to thread the sewing machine. And there we go. In about 30 minutes, we were making camo pants. And it's so fun and humbling to reflect that, wow, even the intention I have put around cultivating my gifts and my abilities, there were still components and compartments that I had created resistance to, that I wasn't taking action on. And one of the things I recognized and observed is when I don't take action on the things that are sitting there, it creates stagnation within me. Creativity and taking action and being in this momentum creates this flow within myself, within my daily rhythm, within my life. It just feels more easeful. And when I am sitting on the things that I have had these little messages on and I don't take action, it creates stagnation. It creates stagnation in my mind. It creates stagnation in my body. It creates stagnation in how I show up in our family and how I show up as our homeschool educator. And so it is so crucial. I'm going to come back to it again. It is so crucial that we are taking that time for ourselves to pour into our vessel, because it's in that filling up our vessel that we're able to pour out into our family and pour out into our children. And so the way I have been able to balance this is we have a curriculum that we have been following, and that has been very helpful to give us some kind of guidance and structure. And if you didn't know already, I used to be a teacher in the public education system, and I was an elementary school counselor. And so I had my own parameters around how I was almost taking like this outside system and bringing it into our home and structuring our homeschool in that way. And I quickly realized that we're not taking school and bringing it home. We were finding our own unique rhythm to homeschool and to learn and to grow. And so that journey has been just that. It's been an unfolding of letting things go that no longer serve. And so while I love our curriculum and it gives us a great foundation to lean on and to pick from, I noticed that when I was letting my son's interests lead the way and sprinkle that into our weekly rhythms or having like unit studies for them, we were all thriving so much better. Our rhythms were more easeful. He had more willingness to take ownership in wanting to learn rather than having resistance to the things that I was bringing to the table to teach him. We have collaborated together in finding the rhythm of, hey, these are things that I do need to teach you, and these are things that you're wanting to learn. Let's bring those together and create our own system of how we're going to homeschool and how we're going to operate. And so it's really about just seeing your child and giving the time and the space. Now, when I say helping them harness their gifts, I don't mean that you have to go tell them what to do. I am here to tell you that telling your children what to do in terms of how to create what they are envisioning. Maybe they want to make something, or maybe they want to play with something. And when we begin to get our adult lenses, okay, we have been alive on this earth, accumulating all of this knowledge or fear and shame and stories for for me, 38 years. My son has only been here for 8 years, and my daughter has only been here for 4 years. So they do not have this big window of knowledge and experience that I carry. And so when I try to tell them how to do X, Y, and Z in what they're playing or creating, it gets in the way. It gets in the way of allowing their gift to unfold. Because yes, I know that that type of glue is not going to work for that type of fabric, but that is my own experience of getting to know that for myself. And if I just say, hey, you know what? You're not going to be able to do that with that glue. It already begins to create just like dissonance. One, between our child parent, it's creating dissonance because we're getting in the way of their creative flow. We're getting in the way of them experiencing that for themselves. What I have found helpful is if they're coming to me about wanting to make something, create something, or learn something, I look at the resources that we have available and offer those. And it's been like, I can trust you to use this, so now I'm going to give you access to this. Like the hot glue gun it's not something that I give my 4-year-old daughter access to by herself, but if my son is helping her, I'm okay with that because he has access and he has shown responsibility that he can use that tool safely. You know, my son has built up to the trust of using a saw, of using a hatchet, of using a pocket knife. And these are things that we have allowed and witnessed and taught. We teach safety and we let go of the parameters of like just helicopter parenting, watching their every move so that we can correct or just find their mistakes. Like I said, we have to find time and space for that to unfold on its own. Now, let's say your child has an interest in a sport and they want to join a sport, and maybe that aligns with your family value system, maybe it doesn't. I encourage you to find ways for that to unfold that does align with your family value system. For instance, personally for our family, having practices multiple times a week, having games all weekend, orienting around one family member just doesn't resonate deeply with us. And so we found a program where they have practice and games on the same day. And so that's a 1-day commitment. And we, tried that and saw how that, oriented in our family. We looked for the feedback of, is this working? Is it not working? Do we like this program? Do we not like this program? And so it's really about experimenting, experiencing, and just trying things, to be quite honest. And so when I am helping my child, when I'm choosing to nurture my child's divine gifts, that means that if they're coming and asking me to do something, to make something, to create something, to go somewhere, I evaluate the ask of what they're asking. I evaluate our family value system. If it requires way more than what we have in the home, we talk about the expenses of that, and we find a way to meet where we can both agree on something to move forward with that. For instance, my son loves to go fishing and really wants to go hunting, and he has expressed this desire. And right now, we do not currently own land or know someone who owns land to bring that to fruition. But we've been talking to our community about land and leases and gun safety. And so, like I said, if they have an interest and they're expressing that to you, I find it very important to listen to what they're saying and to not just dismiss it. We don't use guns in our family or something like that, to just completely take off the table what they are asking. So you can take their interest, you can evaluate it with your family value system, and you can find a way to collaborate, especially as they get older. I really want my children to have autonomy over their education, over their interest, over their talents, and I want to give time and space to whatever that looks like for them. And I hope that in here you have heard that I am not necessarily just giving so much power to my children, that as the parent and the authority figure in our home, one of the authority figures in our home, I am evaluating what they're asking me and finding a middle point that we can all agree on. I'm not going to allow my children to just have free reign over whatever they want in our home and make a huge mess and not clean up after themselves. We have rules and systems. If you are creating something and then you have an idea for something else, you need to clean up what you're doing before you move on to another task, because it's not my job to pick up after all of your experiments and building, and that is your responsibility. And so as they've gotten older, they've had more privileges on what they have access to because they have had more responsibility and shown more responsibility of cleaning up after themselves. And so it isn't just like they say something and they're demanding it and I am just giving all the power to them and saying, okay, if that's what you want to do, whatever, let's do it, fine. It really is a collaboration. It is me still standing in the authority figure in our home and creating safety barriers and parameters so that they can feel the energetics of that and feel the safety, almost like a safety hug around them of like, I'm going to allow you to do this within these parameters, and to know that they don't have the power in our home. They have great power in their minds and their bodies, and also I have noticed that when we give so much power to our children, so much choice and freedom without having structure and boundaries, it can almost begin to feel unsafe for them when they're able to do whatever they want in the means of watching as much TV as they want, or going somewhere without asking, or using things in the house without asking, or, just, it's hard to explain without giving very specifics, but it is, when we're, as a family, for instance, going for a walk and one person in our family unit does not want to go in this certain direction, and we just all, okay, fine, and then let go and let this person lead us. It's more of actually, this is what we decided. Going to the forest is actually going to recharge us up. And so it might be a little bit more of a walk, but we're going to do it together and we can come along. And so we can usher that other family member gently to join us in what we're doing. It has been an unfolding for me to let go of control, to trust, to feel firm in my foundation, in our foundation that we have created as a family, and to feel that foundation as our building point, and as the opportunity to have the safety net for our children to grow, to make mistakes, to have freedoms that they are age appropriate for them, and allowing their interests to lead that growth of their individual self. I hope this conversation was helpful for you, even if you do not homeschool. We have so much authority over how we choose to parent, how we choose to lead our families. And I think this conversation really just starts with getting intentional about how you want to raise your family, getting intentional about how you want to harness your children's interest, and being intentional about pouring into your own vessel and your interest and your gifts and hobbies, and allowing it to be a collaboration together as a family in terms of what that looks like and how that unfolds for you as a family unit. And I am just hoping that this planted seeds in your heart to have conversations with your partner, to even have conversations with your children, and to think about what that could look like. And before I close, I also want to preface the low screen foundation that we have built upon as a family. We do not watch TV every day. We do not play video games. Our kids don't have a TV in their room. And because of this, they have been able to be bored. they have been able to see what interests them. They have been able to play in a way that isn't influenced by a screen. So, like, their play may come from imagination. It may come from imaginative play, maybe from a book we read, but it's their mind creating the imagery and the stories, and it's not coming from a screen. If you have a hard time, or if your children have a hard time having an interest in something, or not feeling confident in themselves and their abilities, one, trial and error, two, but it's almost a disservice when we allow so much screen time, social media scrolling, watching TV, binging on the tablet. It's almost a disservice to our children because they have become almost addicted to the dopamine hits from screen time, that they're not able to allow the space to even allow the creativity to unfold. And I will say that this also started with me as a model. I began to release TV from my habits, my daily rhythms. I don't lean on TV as a wind down time for me in the evening before bed, because one, that disrupts my sleep, and two, I recognized how much it was affecting my dreams and my mental loops. And so I took the lead in that for our family, and I saw the immense benefits for myself when I had less screen time. And I will recognize that if I'm not spending enough time outside or not getting my feet in the earth enough, I will resort to picking up my phone more. And so when I feel that habit coming on more, I get curious about what I need. I don't need my phone. That's not exactly what I need, but I do need something. And so I get curious about what that is. And so, yes, I could not have this conversation without talking about screen time, because I'm not saying to not utilize it as a tool. My son learns how to make certain fishing traps or things that he's looking into, sometimes from YouTube. And we look at videos together and we agree on one to use. He's wanting to, he has an interest in learning to play the piano. And honestly, like, going and outsourcing that to a practice 2 to 3 times a week isn't something that aligns with us. And so looking up some YouTube videos on how to play the piano. And so I'm not saying to not use screens. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying to, again, be intentional with how you use screens. Does your child watch an iPad as you're having family dinner? Does your child have to watch something in the car just to go from point A to point B, which is 30 minutes down the road? Does your child have a hard time turning off TV, turning off the iPad? Does your child have adequate amount of free play without a screen? Those are things to get curious on. And if you do not have that for yourself, we are the models in our home. And so if we are using screen time, maybe more than we would feel proud about, then I think it starts with ourselves. Not that I think, it does. It starts with ourselves. And that's why I started this episode talking about our own interest and pouring into that. But it also comes back to our habits and what are we modeling. If every time I go to the kitchen, I pick up my phone for 5 minutes, my children are going to notice that. And if I need to watch TV every night before I go to bed, that is going to have an effect on my family system. Even if my children aren't witnessing me watching TV, the energy that I hold, the vitality that I hold, or actually is depleting when I watch TV, is going to be felt in our family unit. And so it goes back to intention. If you are spending so much time on a screen that is outside of your work, I would get curious about looking and reevaluating how much that is, why that is, and looking at what you need to replace that. Maybe it's more outside time so you have the energy and the vitality to go without this coping mechanism of TV, of social media, of our phones, of screen time. And so, yes, I'm so glad that dropped in before I ended, because it is really important to evaluate the habits and the rhythms as we cultivate all of our gifts really being nurtured and harnessed. And it hasn't just been me. I've watched my husband's gifts of him creating with his hands come alive, and giving time and space to see that forth, and financially making the commitments for the things that he is building in our home, and to reap the benefits of all the beauty that his creativity has brought into our home. And so it did start with me as, the heart of our home, the mother. My energy is so much more abundant when I'm creating. And that has been felt in our family. And so that has been inspiring my family to create on their own ways and to find their unique gifts. And the last bit that I want to say is we all have unique gifts. Whether you see them or not, whether you have experienced them or not, every single one of us has unique gifts that we were created with, uniquely and divinely for our individual self. And as a child, I did not feel like I had an older person speaking life to that on me. I would try out for a multitude of sports, not make the teams. I would try things and give up, and giving up was allowed in my family. And I never felt like I could anger into something that was a strength of mine. And I really believe that that played a part in how I showed up in the world, of the lack of confidence that I carried for most of my life until recently, when I have brought intentionality around healing that. And so if that was your story, I want to encourage you that, one, if you have a relationship with God, to ask God to bring that to light in your eyes, to allow that to be reawakened within you, and to give messages on what that is, and that you can give this to yourself. You can reparent your inner child to feel confident and to feel that you have a purpose living on this earth, because in order to do that for your children, you need to do that for you if you have never had that for you. And if you see your child and you do not know their gifts, you have not fully seen that. Maybe you just haven't had the energy or the capacity because you're in survival mode. I encourage you to go back to season 1, where I talk about healing your nervous system, because it does require energy to parent in a way that is intentional. And if you are struggling to see that within your own child, I encourage you to pray. I encourage you to meditate on your child. That is one beautiful thing that has come from my curriculum, is they encourage us to do the inner work as the caregiver and the homeschool teacher to be able to show up authentically. And so we do our own meditation for self-work, and we meditate on our child each week and looking at how to support them. So I pray over seeing my child's gifts through God's eyes, in the ways that I can help harness that through God's plans, to allow me to be a sovereign parent that is guiding my child with integrity and intention. And so everyone has these gifts. And if you are struggling in any way to see yours or to see your child's, I really encourage you to make time and space for self-reflection, for meditation, for prayer, for journaling, to ask these questions through prayer. I love to walk and talk to God, because as I'm walking, it creates movement, and it's like I'm able to talk more fluidly and I hear messages more fluidly. And it has been that journey of harnessing my relationship with God to see these divine, beautiful children through God's eyes. And it's such a gift. It is the most precious gift to be a mother and to help nurture their divine, unique self, and to really just protect them from the world of all the messages that wants to tell them that they're not good or great, that they are this most beautiful, creative, abundant, radiant, strong-willed, beautiful children and beings. And so I hope that this episode has brought some inspiration for you to cultivate that in your family, and that it has brought some spark within your heart to look at your gifts and how to bring them to light into the world. And stay tuned for more episodes on this season of Deepening Relationships, and just really talking about, the next episode is going to be about deepening with the land around us. And so stay tuned for the next episode. I'm sending you with so much love and blessings. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It has truly been an honor to walk alongside you and share my journey of motherhood with you. If you feel connected with this episode, I would just so love if you could leave a rating and a review. This really helps the podcast grow so that it can reach other mothers and women along this journey. And I always love hearing your takeaways and your interactions with this podcast. So if you ever feel called to share on Instagram and social media, be sure to tag me at the.embodied.mother so I can connect with you and your takeaways from this podcast. Until next time, I'm sending you with so much love and blessings on your journey in this life.